The OTA changes just dropped, and y'all, they are spicy. Let's check them out. First up to be whacked with the Nerf bat, you know her, you love her, or hate her, Kitty Pryde. Now, Kitty Pryde has been a core component of what I would describe as the best deck in the game, very reasonably. The bounce deck and also the bounceless bounce shells. One of those two decks has been the best deck in the game by a significant margin, and Second Dinner confirmed this in their OTA drop, saying that it had a shocking amount of 60+% matchups, as well as an incredible skill differential. Kitty Pryde was the best card in the deck, not necessarily by a significant margin, but her being drawn early was one of the +1 determinants of victory. So what they've done is they've slowed down her snowball. Now, instead of being a 1-0 that gets +2 every time she returns back to your hand, she's a 1-2 higher floor that only gets +1 when she goes back to your hand, so lower ceiling. I think, obviously, I'm interested to see whether the bounce decks can survive, whether the bounceless bounce decks can survive, whether they feel the need to add in Sarah to sort of make up that lost point differential. Spoiler, some other OTAs might be influencing that as well, instead of the Iron Man that they tend to be running now. And also, notably, Bast gets a little bit worse with Kitty Pryde because she now starts with power, although, to be fair, most of the time, Kitty wasn't really your Bast target anyways. You were really trying to hit Iron Man with that as much as you possibly could. So there's a little bit up in the air right now. That said, I still think this version of Kitty Pryde is quite powerful, and I am not expecting her to go away anytime soon, just based on how strong it is with Bishop and Angela. Next on the list of bounce nerfs is another card that might point us a little bit toward a Sarah-style Explode on 5 deck now that it has been changed. That is HitMonkey going from a 2-0 to a 3-2. That 3 cost is a little bit interesting. I know people are going to think, oh, maybe I can play that in Silver Surfer, and maybe you can, but you're still only really playing 3 cards on the final turn with a Sarah there. I don't really see the appeal if that was something that I would be coming up with. I think it's still going to be a key card in Explode late decks, but you might have to make a little bit more sacrifices in order to make it work. Obviously, 3 energy is really impacting the amount of other cards you can play with it. Of course, you can still go like Kitty, Mysterio, HitMonkey, and that's still pretty good. But another little stealthy thing they did here is make HitMonkey also a little bit worse with Bast. Now, instead of a 2-0 going to a 2-3, it's a 3-2 going to a 3-3, a pretty significant nerf to how Bast works in the deck, and I think a relatively healthy way of dealing with Bast. I said before the patch that the 2 things that I wanted nerfed the most were Kitty Pryde and HitMonkey, and then the next one on the list was Bast, and they managed to nerf Kitty Pryde and HitMonkey in a way that actually does impact their ability to work well with Bast. So I think they really hit all 3 of those things. SpiderHam does whatever a SpiderHam can, but now he's not doing it on turn 1 anymore. Going from a 1-1 to a 2-2 is a little bit of an interesting move. Obviously, it downgrades SpiderHam's ability as a splashable card. We're probably not splashing it in High Evolutionary Lockjaw anymore. We're probably not splashing it in our bounce decks anymore. But one thing we might be doing with it is, playing it a lot more in decks that are already running Killmonger. One place that I really thought I could really use a SpiderHam is in the Silver Surfer Storm Spider-Man decks. Your 2-drop slot is usually either Jeff or Goose or both, and I think SpiderHam could slot in there really well as an answer to some certain cards that really give those decks trouble, like Magneto, like Doctor Doom, cards that put power onto closed-off locations. A lot of those tend to cost 6. SpiderHam is just a solid answer, and now that it's not a 1 cost, I'm a little interested in playing it in there because now our Killmonger doesn't kill our own SpiderHam. So I think that's the first thing I'm going to be trying the new SpiderHam in, is a Silver Surfer deck with it as one of the 2 cost cards in here. Now that it's not dying to our Killmonger, I actually think that is pretty compelling. This is a genuinely unprecedented buff. We have never had a season pass card changed while it's still on the season pass, and they are being aggressive with trying to make sure Phoenix Force is a real card. And they have, instead of making it a turn 5 play, made it a turn 4 play. And this unlocks a lot of different things that are now a little bit more possible with this card. So now instead of only getting one turn with it, like previous Phoenix Force decks, they tended to use, multiple man and you get one turn out of multiple man. But now, like, if you can do Human Torch and get 2 turns out of Human Torch and your stuff isn't Killmonger, that is going to be the biggest guy. So you Phoenix Force a Human Torch and then you play a Taskmaster on the Human Torch. Like that is an astonishing amount of power. It is a lot of points. Obviously, you also get an extra turn out of the multiple man stuff now, more points being left on the board. I think this is actually a potentially legitimately significant buff because I think that this opens up more lines for Phoenix Force based, I guess you'd call them combo decks to exist, and it's actually pretty scary. Like when those decks go off, they are scary, and I think they might only be held back by their own inconsistencies, but this is a solid buff to an underpowered card, and I am a huge fan of their aggression in buffing this card while it's still on the season pass, as opposed to doing it when it's off the season pass and people now feel bad about not buying it because it was bad when it was for sale. Speaking of buffs to underplayed season pass cards, I think this is a very interesting one. Ghost Spider is already a card that has a ton of utility, and making it more easily splashable is a very interesting thing to do. One playline I'd like to point out is that you can now more easily accomplish the Invisible Woman Magik Ghost Spider the Invisible Woman juke. It's pretty compelling. I'm not sure it'll actually get anywhere, but I do know that Ororong made the top 2 of one of these Snap Battle Arenas in the past month, I believe. It was either a Snap Battle Arena or a Snap Fan Open with a Move Thanos deck that was doing this as the gimmick. It basically went nowhere after that because it was impossibly hard to play, but you should be aware that you can do that kind of stuff with this card. In addition, the normal move deck actually won a Snap Battle Arena as well, and I think that is also quite interesting because the normal move deck is... I have always felt that the normal move deck is very good at getting a lot of games to 50-50 situations and then capitalizing on the uncertainty of your opponents. And I think that this buff to Ghost Spider will keep it in the same range, but should make it a little more flexible, a little more easy for you to get the power that you need on the board. And generally, I think the mid-game of those move decks was a little bit clogged because you needed to have the right cards in the right order. And now, you're not playing just a Vulture on turn 4 because that's the only way you're going to get the Vulture down. You're playing Vulture and Ghost Spider on turn 4. I think that clearing up those middle turns where sometimes you were just playing one payoff card because you needed the payoff card on the board, and now getting some immediate reward for that instead, that's a genuinely solid boost to the move archetype. Living Tribunal with a buff to the nicest stat line in the game, 6-9. Living Tribunal, same effect, just getting a 3 power buff, which is effectively a 1 power buff on every lane that we have when we play this card. I don't necessarily think that is going to push it into competitive relevance, but I will say I have lost to some Living Tribunal builds. They have genuine upside against a metagame that can be heavy on lockdown. So, for example, the turn 4 Professor X based Thanos decks actually kind of just entirely eat it to the Living Tribunal. Just the existence of this card actually genuinely punishes them a lot. And I think at 6-9, it's actually a lot more interesting than it was at 6-6, where it was basically just like bad Mr. Fantastic. Now it's like legitimately a little bit better. It's kind of an interesting juke. I'm a little bit more intrigued by this. I will say I am a little bit sad that they decided to buff Living Tribunal the week after it was featured in the Spotlight cache. That does feel a little bit bad to me, just because I could have had a chance to acquire the card, and now I don't really have a chance to acquire the card. So I am a little bit sad about that. And I guess part of me is a little bit hoping, like, I really hope I don't have to. I hope this isn't good. But I will admit to being more than a little bit intrigued by this and its potential. Not necessarily in every context. I don't think like a baseline Living Tribunal deck is ever going to be meta just because of how weak it is to like very clear counters like Enchantress and now Echo. But I do think that it is the kind of thing that in the right situation can thrive. I don't think it'll ever be dominant, but I do think that this is a good push to an archetype that, let's be honest, needed it and probably won't ever ruin anyone's day. So this happened. Magik going to a 3-2. Like, there's just so much about this that is really hard for me to evaluate, right? Because on the one hand, if a Magik deck ever becomes very, very popular, the counterplay of like Thanos Reality Stone, Scarlet Witch, Rhino, Storm, very clear, right? It's not the kind of thing that I wonder if it has like legit legs in terms of consistently dominating a metagame. But it does seem like the kind of thing where if you see a decrease in the things that beat you and you see some real upside to playing Magik, you can really get some value out of this card. One place that I am interested to try it, although I don't think it really makes the cut, would be Silver Surfer, although it probably could not be the Spider-Man or Storm build. I just think that Silver Surfer is generally interested in drawing Silver Surfer, and an extra draw would probably go a long way there. It's just that you do kind of run into issues in terms of weaving your stuff in when it comes to playing Spider-Man, especially because that's a card that really wants to be played on turn 5. Maybe you can make it work. I just think generally Silver Surfer might actually legitimately be interested in this. Another deck that could be interested in it is Cerebro 2. Cerebro 2 was already pretty good. Like, not good, but like good for a Cerebro deck. And now with Storm and this, it's got some real ways to actually get rid of those detrimental locations. Obviously, like, you know, if you get a 9 power monster on your side of the board, you are still super sad. But you can get rid of more than one bad location with this. You can even play Luke Cage in your Cerebro 2 deck to get rid of even more potential bad locations or your opponent's high evolutionary tags. I'm a little interested in Cerebro 2 because that is another deck that really, really wants to be drawing 1 or 2 specific cards in order to be on. So I think Magik in Cerebro 2 seems like a bit more of a natural fit than in Silver Surfer, but Silver Surfer is likely a more powerful deck just sort of generally. That said, I really am interested to see where this goes in something like Cerebro 2 and in Lord knows what other shells. Like, we talked a little bit about the Ghost Spider, Invisible Woman, Magik, Juke stuff. I don't know if that goes anywhere, but it has done well in tournaments in the past. And I do think this is a good time to sort of highlight, like, these are changes that are likely to perhaps not provide meta-dominant decks, Magik and Living Tribunal, but I think they're changes that if you take advantage of them properly and play them into the right metagames can really do well for you on a given weekend. Second Dinner also announced that they are reducing the frequency of the Great Web, and I'm going to be honest, there are a ton of awesome changes in this patch. That's probably the awesomest. I hate the Great Web. I think everyone watching this hates the Great Web. That location absolutely sucks, and I'm glad they are reducing its appearance rate because, frankly, if they reduced it to 0, that would not be far enough for me. There should be a negative chance for me to see Great Web in any of my games. My God, I hate that location. And it was previously put at common, which obviously is pretty common. That's not good. I don't know where they bumped it to. Maybe uncommon, maybe rare. I don't know, but anything is better than common. So in terms of decks that I'm going to try right after the change, I think the first one is very clearly Silver Surfer. Now, I don't know exactly which of the 2-cost cards I plan on replacing with SpiderHam. That is a problem for another time. But right now, what I want to do is take what I think is an already very powerful shell that has a lot of answers to everything, that proactively asks some really, really powerful questions like, can you beat Storm and Spider-Man if I am blowing up your Doctor Doom or Magneto with a SpiderHam? Things like that. I want to start here. I also am interested in exploring the Shuri shell now that a lot of changes have been made to what I consider the core of it. So what we're looking at here is the pre-OTA version of the Shuri deck, and post-OTA, I mean, I don't know if we can run SpiderHam anymore. Maybe we replace him with Zero, but I think the real question for this deck is, since so much of it is predicated on being able to go Kitty into Shuri, then Kitty on the Shuri with a Taskmaster on turns 5 and 6, and now that Kitty is going to be significantly smaller, especially if we draw her late, I'm a little bit wondering if maybe the deck falls apart a little bit. I think we really need to find out is the honest answer, because the point potential it has is genuinely still remarkable. It has a ton of extremely powerful tech cards, armor, loot cage, and I've been wanting to fit Zero in anyway, so I guess I'm not that sad that we're losing SpiderHam, but I do wonder if the nerf to Kitty and that sort of plan A / plan B ends up putting us in a bad situation. I think that's something that needs to be figured out. Finally, I've got one more deck that no changes at all from the nerfs, just a straightforward, powerful thing to be doing. Let's check it out. You know what time it is. I know what time it is. It's Patriot time. This was an extremely powerful deck already. It probably did not get much worse with the nerfs. I think the real question is, if we need to be Invisible Woman Killmongering, Invisible Woman Shang-Chiing, in an open meta, I prefer coming into it prepared with answers, but I don't think necessarily that you'd be wrong for saying, no, we don't need any of that. We're just going to go super, super tall. We're going to play like Wave and 3/6s and Iron Man and just high roll every Iron Lad. I don't think that's necessarily like off base. I just sort of tend to prefer this style of deck rather than the alternative. But if it turns out that like we don't actually need Killmonger and Shang-Chi, we can actually just build for pure power, I'd be interested in that too, because this is a deck that uses Invisible Woman extremely well. Even if you're not doing Killmonger Shang-Chi stuff with it, it protects your Patriot and Mystique from Enchantress. You can do a lot of tricky stuff with it as well. Like, it is just a great Invisible Woman deck. I tend to want to double down on the things the deck is good at, but it's possible I'm getting too fancy and we should just be going for pure point slam, no brain, turn your brain off, play Iron Lad, snap, and everything is going to be okay kind of deck. I don't really know, but I do think that this is going to be a legitimate player just in terms of being a baseline powerful deck that can put a lot of points on the board. And I think, you know, even if Bounce ends up surviving, even if there are Sarah decks running around, the fact that they are still going to be playing Kitty Pryde, the fact that they are going to be playing a giant HitMonkey, the fact that we can protect our stuff from their potential Enchantresses with that Invisible Woman, the fact that we can always hit their Kitty Pryde with a Killmonger and their HitMonkey with a Shang-Chi thanks to Invisible Woman, I feel like we're going to be pretty favored in that matchup because we were pretty favored against the pre-nerf versions. So I'm a little bit interested to see which of these three decks ends up performing well for me. If you want to find out, you can check out my stream on twitch.tv/KMBestMS. That's going to be it from me. Leave a comment, like, subscribe if you liked the video. If you made it this far, please do all of those things. I'm interested to hear from you. Which of these OTA changes is your favorite? And what decks are you going to be playing on day one? As always, I read every comment. I am pretty stupid for doing that, but I committed to doing it and I will continue to do it. Thank you so much for watching. I have been KM Best. You have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.